Bienvenidas. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this very special panel presentation that we have today through CRISJ. I welcome you to today's panel titled The Essential Labor Farm Workers During the Pandemic. My name is Manuel Barajas. I'm a professor of sociology and serve as the chair for the CRISJ task force that is hosting this panel. I want to thank those who helped organize this event: Heidi Sarabia, Cristina Victor, Manny Lares, Ana Gutierrez, Kathleen Williams, and Brother Carter. I also thank the panelists for making time to join us in this important conversation. I'm going to give you just a very brief background to this event. The California economy has been enriched by farm workers who have made agribusiness the most powerful and richest industry in the nation and world. California agribusiness employs about half to 1 million workers, mostly undocumented, some documented, and fewer H-2A guest workers. Farm workers make up 1 to 2% of the total workforce in the labor force in the nation. A great majority are Mexicans of indigenous ancestry, many who maintain their cultural identities as Mixteco, Triqui, Purépecha, Otomi, Nahuatl, and so on. In the context of COVID-19, farm workers are essential workers because without their role in the food supply chain, the nation would crumble. No other essential workers in health, groceries, safety, delivery, and so on would be able to do their work without food. However, if farm workers get sick or injured and become unemployed or underemployed, they do not qualify for unemployment insurance or federal aid. The few who qualify for unemployment insurance have already used it during the winter break. Consequently, during the pandemic, farm working families struggle with fewer earnings than their typical poverty wages, and they're not getting the governmental attention or protection they need to stay healthy. To the contrary, the executive administration seeks to further devalue their labor and lives. The federal $2 trillion pandemic financial package excludes farm workers who already lack living wages, unemployment insurance, health coverage, and affordable housing. These essential workers have made California the 5th largest economy in the world. And yet their safety and health are exceptionally neglected. The pandemic reveals a blinding contradiction. The nation recognizes farm workers as essential labor, but denies them equity and humanity. It also reveals a gross injustice. The federal stimulus package directs billions of dollars to agribusiness affected by the COVID-19 closures, but offers no support to the essential workers who contribute to the wealth of agribusiness in the nation. In a more positive direction, the state recently promised some funds to a small fraction of farm workers. But this aid is more symbolic and is greatly limited in reach and impact, considering their essential labor in the $20+ billion industry in California. Today's CRISJ panel will help us understand: 1, these marginalized heroes; 2, their labor conditions; 3, policies that can advance their labor and human rights as essential workers; and 4, information and resources that can help these farm working families. We have 5 panelists, and each will have 10 to 12 minutes. I will introduce each with a very brief biography, and each can further elaborate. At the end, we will have a Q&A period, and if you have a question, please send it via Zoom chat to Professor Heidi Sarabia, who will be presenting them to the panelists, the questions. Okay, I will just read out their names, all of them, and present the first one, give the bio. And then when the other one continues, I will provide a very brief bio. Okay, we have the following 5 panelists: Irene de Barraicua; 2, Nuri Rubio; 3, Desiree Rojas; 4, L. Rojas; and 5, Juanita Ontiveros. So we're gonna begin with Irene Barraicua. She is a public relations communication manager for Líderes Campesinas. Líderes Campesinas works to strengthen the leadership of women farm workers so that they can be agents of economic, social, and political change to advance their human rights. She is also a co-founder of Integrate Bilingüe Service Center and is a longtime activist, advocate, researcher, and filmmaker who studied healthcare, education, and politics in Cuba and traveled to Guatemala with doctors to help the efforts of Cesar Montes Fondo de Tierras to retrieve land taken from indigenous peasant communities. In recent years, she has also traveled to over 25 US states, interviewing farm workers for the National Agricultural Workers Survey. So we're gonna begin with her and she will have 10 to 12 minutes. And I will let you know when you have 2 minutes left, Irene. So can we start with you?
Great, thank you, Manuel. Nice to see everybody here, and thank you everybody for all your work. So yes, Líderes Campesinas, you know, as many other organizations dedicated to farm workers and many other essential workers, as well as many people that are already in need before this COVID-19 pandemic occurred. We're also on the front lines with everybody else, right? In terms of reaching the needs of farm workers. So where can I begin? I guess what we have been addressing as an organization was, first of all, we were on high alert when this pandemic, before it became really a big issue. And so we've been always being composed of 14 chapters throughout California. Our first orders from our director, I guess orders, you know, but recommendations from our director was to be on top of the guidelines and the public health department's recommendations. And so I feel we really had an advantage in that sense, just from being on top of this since before February, and nobody knew how big this was going to get. So what Líderes Campesinas really started doing was listening to the farm workers as things were progressing little by little, right? Their concerns and their worries and how this was affecting them, and what the potential outcomes were going to end up being. And so preparing for how we can all kind of build and grow together, all of the different organizations that are there to help people in order to prevent people running out of food and you know, their stress of not having work. So we've really been kind of focused on prevention. So one of the things we did was we wrote a letter to the governor and to many of the state officials and local county officials, city officials, as well as our fellow allies and friends, just to kind of come together with us and all be on the same page in regards to what needs to be done. And so I can kind of pinpoint some of the, you know, the points that were made on behalf of the farm worker families of California. And of course, there's still so much more to address, but we figured we would start with 8 major points that Líderes Campesinas focuses on. So if it's okay, I could kind of start with that. So we also, being that we're an organization composed of women farm workers, our board is 26 representatives of women throughout the state, from Coachella to up north to Sonoma and Napa. We figured we would take a more nurturing type of approach to this. And so we also addressed our letter to Jennifer Newsom and as well as Governor Gavin Newsom, just to have that, you know, womanly kind of input and compassion, right? Not that men do not have that, but we just thought we would take that approach. So the concern number 1 that is the message that we received from farm workers is the inadequate health education on the field, you know, to farm workers. And so to us, this is really about prevention. And like, you know, some people at the beginning were like, well, there's no cases yet, right? And but still, I mean, once there is one case, we see all how it spreads so quickly. So getting all the farm workers the same kind of, you know, getting them all also on the same page in terms of education is very, very important. We see that there is a lot of tools where people can go on the internet and they could read about it, and they could watch videos, right, in different languages, which all of those are beautiful tools. But how do we know the person working next to us read the same thing, right? So now we're seeing more people are reading, that are educated in reading this. They go to work and they're more paranoid because they don't know if their coworker was actually also trained on their own in the same way. And so what we address in our concern number 1 is currently there is no education directly on the field by medical and health professionals on COVID-19. Supervisors or foremen are presenting this information at their discretion. So witnesses have claimed little time is spent on the topic, sometimes minimizing disease risks and underestimating the global pandemic. Farm workers have also reported continued work in groups of 20 and sometimes 60 people side by side, exceeding social distancing standards. Similarly, there is a concern for carpooling, continuing as always. So this all changes, right, depending on what area you're in. But say in Coachella in the South, you have a lot of people still coming in from Mexico, crossing the border every day. They're walking in groups. They're either driving in big groups. So that's a big concern there. Is the carpooling, right? And now we see a big, a lot of people coming in that are now H2A. We noticed there's like thousands that just came in the last week. So then it's like you have to retrain all of them, and they're all coming in buses to work. But we do know that definitely there are guidelines in place, right? It's just how can you prevent this in the first place? And so number 2 is that inaccessibility to healthcare. Farm workers already experience less access to healthcare due to a lack of funds and their immigration status. Amidst well-intentioned actions to stop COVID-19 from spreading, these regular barriers grow, making it far more unlikely for farm workers to visit a doctor in response to cold and flu symptoms or other health conditions, including mental health and overall stress. And so we do know a lot of people, including our governor, have made new moves on this since we wrote it. But also it's just about getting that message out to the actual farm workers, that for them to know. So that's part of the big work, right? Is we may know this as advocates and as organizations and nonprofits and politicians, but it's getting that message to the actual workers. Like, you are able now to go to the doctor and you don't get charged. Because we've had farm workers call us that were put in quarantine just for having flu symptoms, and they could not pay their bills for their medicines or for their doctor visits. At one point, the Mexican consulate had to step in just for him to move forward because they weren't accepting no payment for his visits. So now a little bit has changed in that area, and we're very happy about that. But still, now it's about making sure people know, like, you can go to the doctor, and there is Medi-Cal in place for anyone. And but also, of course, we want when these individuals who have any symptoms related to COVID-19, even if they're not diagnosed, they should be able to have some kind of hazard pay, right? Some kind of sick pay or something, because by regulations of CDC and most of their work, employers are not going to have them on the work, on the working when they have these symptoms and when they don't have test results that show negative. So some kind of compensation is definitely important, because people are being left unable to pay their bills, their rent, their food. And on top of that, it's so much stress. That stress also it goes into the food system. Like, this is all, energy, right? And I know that's on another level, but it's all very much related. And so we want the people to be taken care of. We want them to feel healthy mentally, emotionally, physically. And so we are working hard to just continue to keep people informed, and it's nice we get phone calls. It's just also important to be on the same page, all of us, with all other organizations and allies that could help relay this message, right? To those that don't tend to use the internet or use certain forms of technology that others do. So another point, I don't know where my time is, but I'll focus on also unhoused farm workers. Like we know this is a public health concern. I'm a believer that everybody should have a home. Nobody should live unhoused in a country, as in any country really, but especially in the United States of America. So we want to make sure that unhoused farm workers also are not living in their cars, where normally they have access to stores to take showers and bathe or clean their hands, but now these stores are closed. And so we have a lot of a homeless farm worker population in the Coachella Valley because the temperature is warmer down there, right? And I know this happens probably in many other states too, but there it's very common. And so we want an immediate housing of all farm workers. And that's definitely not only a farm worker issue, it's a public health issue that people are being able to maintain personal hygiene. And so definitely also domestic violence. Líderes Campesinas focuses a lot on domestic violence prevention. And we do know that already it's a situation where the state has cut funding to rape crisis centers, to shelters for women. And already it's been proven that it's gone up like 77%, the reports for domestic violence situations in let's say Fresno County alone. And so just thinking of the stress that this causes to homes, to fathers, to mothers, to the children. I mean, a lot of abuse could be happening here. And so we are really stressing that the state give funding to these crisis centers that exist, because now not only does the stay at home and these, new regulations make it so much harder for pending cases of, of domestic violence and that were already pending with the courts. Those are kind of in limbo. So it's really having the funding to go to these organizations that address these things is very important to Líderes Campesinas. And so yes, we are working hard right now. Is also the focus of sexual violence against women. So we are working hard on the bandana project. So we're trying to get messages out there related to COVID-19 as well. And pretty much that's, kind of sums up a bit of what Líderes Campesinas is doing. We're involved in a lot of task force groups along the coast and in the Central Valley, just working also with, as much as we can to be advocates for farm workers with farm bureaus, representatives from the agricultural industry, because this right now is really the time to build those bridges, right? It was the way it was necessary a long time ago. And right now, I think I'm very happy that this communication is becoming a trend. And so we're here to definitely work with all of you and continue la lucha.
Muy bien, perfecto. Iba a decir un minuto.
Oh,
just
great.
in time.
Thank you.
Gracias. I forgot to tell you 2 minutes.
Oh, gracias.
Yeah. So, gracias, Irene. Thank you very much.
Gracias, Manuel.
Thank you. The next panelist is Nuri Rubio, who's a recent graduate from Sacramento State. She worked in the fields throughout her childhood, college years, and is currently working for Unite, organizing casino workers in various Northern California counties. She has intimate experiences with the fields. Sorry. Okay. She has intimate experiences with the fields. Her family still works in the fields. Her insights of the lived experience in the fields and current conditions will give us a good understanding of what's going on in her immediate social circles. Gracias, Nuri.
Yes, hi everyone. Thank you for having me. As Professor Barajas said, I'm a daughter of immigrants who worked in the fields and continue to work in the fields. Thank you for having me. My name is Nuri. I'm currently an organizer with Unite Here, Local 49. We're a labor union. We represent the hospitality industry. That's including the restaurants, casinos, hotels, food service, and the airports. I'm also a DACA recipient. I've been here since I was a year and a half old, and I grew up in Stockton, now residing in Sacramento. And growing up, both my parents working in the fields, working 10+ hours a day, 6 days a week, leaving only Sundays off to spend time with my siblings and I, giving us very little quality family time. Growing up consisted of me caring for my younger siblings since I was around 9 years old, I also had to clean the house, make sure my brothers ate after school. Overall, this created a very stressful childhood for me, since I was a child caring for my siblings myself, because my parents had to spend long days out in the fields working to make ends meet. And growing up, I wondered why I had all these responsibilities, why my parents had to be absent in our childhoods. So I got curious, and I decided that I needed to experience what it meant to work in the fields and to see why my parents were always tired and with very little to no energy after work. So I did various types of works, such as picking cherries, walnuts, squash, blueberries, raking the trees after they had been pruned, and even pruning grapevines. I want to share a little bit of my experience with you. So this resonates with me. January 10th, 2015, I was helping my dad in la poda de la uva, or pruning the grapevines. It's during the winter, so it's in January. It was cold, the grass, the vines were wet. I was soaked and exhausted. And at the end of the day, I was only given somewhere around $10 to $20 for the work that I had done to help my dad finish his line. I had spent the previous summer saving my money for my first phone, and that day, as I needed to use the restroom, I had to walk across the field. And as I was walking, I was thinking about how tired I felt, how my hands were aching from the cold, wet gloves. And I get to the bathroom, and since my hands were nearly numb from holding the shears with the wet gloves, I couldn't grab my phone, and it fell into the portable potty. At that moment, I didn't know how to feel. Many emotions ran through my mind. I was mad that my hands were numb. I was upset that my feet were wet. I felt like all my hard work and savings from the previous summer were gone. And the phone is just a materialistic symbol, but the meaning behind it is much more. I felt like I deserved to be in the position that I was in because I didn't feel like I could have been working elsewhere. This scenario plays out many times throughout the community of farm workers, where over and over again, we work tirelessly to save and strive for the American dream. And then multiple obstacles come our way. For example, now COVID-19, with their life savings, vanishing as time goes on. And once again, we feel like we have to start over and over and over again. I could have left after my first couple summers, once I had the experience that I was looking for to fulfill that understanding as during my childhood. However, I kept going back every summer and every winter because I got stuck with the idea that I was not skilled to do any other job. And oftentimes people think that farm labor may have the conception that it's an unskilled job. Us here, however, we know that it's completely wrong. It requires a lot of skill to do the jobs out in the fields. Several times I felt like I was not capable of leaving and looking for a different job, again, because I didn't feel qualified. And don't get me wrong, I loved working out in the fields because I was surrounded by amazing people who inspired me and pushed me to get a higher education. And to find a job that would enable me to go back one day and to help those that kept working. Throughout our community many times go through the exact same feeling that I went through, where we feel like we could be doing other jobs, but we fear of speaking up about what we deserve, and that holds us back. I know I felt that multiple times throughout the summers that I worked out in the fields. The work that our farm workers do for this country is not appreciated enough by our administration. These individuals play a vital role in helping meet the public health goal of ensuring an accessible supply of food, yet many of these individuals are not paid livable wages, and they work in hazardous conditions and face discrimination. To answer question B, from my expertise, what are some of the labor conditions? Again, this is from my experience from when I was working out in the fields. When I worked in the fields, one of the main issues I experienced were the unsanitary bathrooms. During the time I worked throughout the summers in the fields, often the portable potties would be unclean for a couple of weeks or a couple of days. And during the summer, when the weather is above 100 degrees, I could smell the portable potties. I wouldn't want to use it, and I would rather wait until I would go home. I would go hours without using the bathroom, to the point that one time I did get a bladder infection. With that, access to clean water to wash your hands was also an issue we encountered. Since the portable potties aren't clean as often as we would like, the water also isn't refilled in the water station to properly wash your hands. And this goes back to what Irene was mentioning, prevention is key during this time. Again, there are policies that can essentially require the contractor to provide a clean and safe bathroom. But in my experience, throughout the years I worked there, I never saw anyone enforcing any of that. And if there's no one enforcing these regulations to ensure we have clean and sanitary preventative care, then we're not getting anywhere at all. As an organizer, you know, in our shops, we have union contracts, and just because it's written, it doesn't mean it's gonna happen. A contract is just a piece of paper, unless the workers are organized and empower and try to enforce what's within it. If not, then nothing's gonna happen. Many times I was scared to ask when the next time the portable potty would be cleaned, because if I did so, I believed I would lose my opportunity to come back and work the next summer and the next winter. And just like me, workers should not feel fear to speak up about what they deserve, especially now a clean bathroom is a basic need during this pandemic. To answer question C, given farm workers classification as essential labor, what are some policy recommendations I have? As we've discussed, farm workers are considered essential workers. They are risking their health to ensure that we have access to fruits and vegetables. Farm workers face numerous challenges to protect themselves and their family members from COVID-19 due to their working conditions. These conditions could easily go to the spread of COVID-19 and could potentially result in transmission to dozens and potentially hundreds of workers. Farm workers also play an important role in food safety, and therefore protections are needed to assure the safety of our food supply and of their own as well. We've all heard of what Governor Newsom announced on Wednesday about the disaster relief aid for working Californians to provide financial help to undocumented immigrants impacted by COVID-19. I think we need more than that as well. We need a policy to strengthen the rights to organize in California. In United States law, workers are guaranteed certain labor protections to ensure decent working conditions. However, these protections have not always been guaranteed. Most farm workers lack basic labor protections such as workers' compensation, health insurance, and disability insurance. They lack protections from joining unions and engaging in collective bargaining. And once again, we may have different proposals, but if they're not going to be properly enforced, then that's not going to do any good for our workers. What we need is farm workers to be empowered to fight for what they deserve. And lastly, what are some of the resources that I can share with farm working communities and our allies? Like I mentioned, I've been an organizer with Unite Here for the last 3 years. And my main goal is to seek collaboration with other organizations and build movement from there and build power together. With Unite Here, many of our members are immigrants or come from a family of immigrants, many of whom are women of color. And much of my time with Unite Here, I've spent working with citizenship, helping and training volunteers to fill out the N400s. I myself am offering to train and collaborate with other organizations to teach people who are interested in organizing. We need to organize bottom up and teach workers how to take control of their shops. So if people have questions about organizing, I would love to connect with you. One of my immediate resources I can offer would be our website. It's uniteherelocal49.org. We're constantly researching for resources for our members. We have information available in Spanish. And to finish off, like Irene mentioned, we need to build bridges. That's why I'm here, looking forward to discussing further on how we can collaborate and push the movement forward. I'll include my email in the chat box if any of you are interested in reaching out to me. Thank you.
Muchísimas gracias, Nuri. We have Desiree Rojas, who's the president of the Labor Council of Latin American Advancement. She's a committee member of the California Progressive Alliance and a longtime labor and civil rights advocate going back to when she was a little child. She and her father, Al Rojas, have been involved in a transnational boycott of Driscoll Company and in support of farm workers from Baja and Alta California, Oregon, and Washington. So thank you, Desiree, for making time to participating in this panel. Seguimos contigo. Oh, we can't hear you. We can't hear you.
Yeah,
Okay.
I just want to say that the comrades who spoke earlier were very right on everything that they addressed. Being the president of Labor Council for Latin American Advancement, Sacramento chapter, means that we are a coalition of unions, and we are a labor organization tied to the AFL-CIO and Change to Win. We've been on the front lines fighting for farm workers in the US and in Mexico for a very long time, and started our bridge building probably 25 years ago. As you mentioned earlier, we're on the Driscoll boycott right now. There's a lot to talk about, but I first want to open up and start with our recent work with a letter that we also wrote to the governor. And I know a lot of people are writing letters to the governor, as they should, but we felt it was very, very important to outline our concerns based on the work and the organizing that we're doing right now, even nationwide in the United States, with talking to workers, essential workers from various classifications who are right now being attacked. We're living in a remarkable time and a very emotional time when we should be seeing more support for workers, of the working class and for poor. But we're actually seeing essential workers, which when we say essential workers that have been identified by the federal government, we're talking about hundreds and thousands of different classifications of jobs, technicians, nurses, farm workers, delivery,
Desiree,
people who do classes.
can you get closer to the microphone, please?
Is this better? Is this better?
Yeah.
Okay. So there's a lot of essential worker classifications, and in these classifications, the workers that are right now holding our nation together, of course, farm workers, they're under attack. They're literally under attack. This is a genocide of what's happening right now in our country. To see what's happening in Detroit, New York, this diabolical president who has done nothing but actually remove the rights of workers and try to squash workers is absolutely horrible. I mean, we all know that right now he wants to cut the pay for farm workers, right? So LACLA decided to write a letter. And in this letter, we talked about some very key issues that I'd like to address. You know, today, of course, farm workers and essential workers are literally deciding whether to pay the rent or buy food. We have a federal stimulus package. I think there'll be a second one. But in our letter, we have demanded that the governor, we've pleaded with the governor, that being that California is the 5th largest economy in the world, we want to expand on the fact that California not only feeds the US, but the exports coming out of California is so significant that we're feeding the world. A lot of our export is going into Canada. And who is picking the vegetables and fruits behind this global export? It's farm workers. So what we're talking about that we need to really, really hit home on this is that this is 100%. This is a national security issue. We're talking about food that's feeding people and that's making it on the tables of people. And so in our letter, we address this, and we're saying this is a matter of life and death. We are living in a pandemic, a global pandemic. And California's economy and people are at risk. Farm workers are at risk. And so what we're saying is that, you know, when you have Congress earmarking billions of dollars, you know, over $20 billion to agriculture, and none of this is working its way into the hands of farm workers, then we have a big problem. Then we have to start addressing this at the California level, which is why we've demanded that Governor Newsom, create an emergency stimulus package that would help farm workers, immigrants, and people who have slipped through the cracks of not being able to get this federal stimulus money. Now, we all know that he just passed this, what we call an emergency fund package, but this is not an emergency relief package that will be in place for a long time. And, you know, what we want is something that's permanent, that's going to help farm workers. We also want to put emphasis, you know, from our letter, we put a lot of emphasis on the fact that, you know, in addition to farm worker protections, we put a lot of emphasis on, you know, Cal OSHA. We know that the federal level OSHA isn't doing anything. They're not being proactive. They're not doing outreach. They're not educating people. And nor is California. You know, we need Cal OSHA to be out there assessing and to make sure that the health and welfare of farm workers and all essential workers like nurses are being protected. We have over 23 million people who are unemployed in this country right now. Millions of people in California, like teachers, are being laid off. We've asked the governor to create a program, an emergency program that would hire these laid off workers into Cal OSHA as Cal OSHA agents, at least 1,000 of them in California, to go out to each class of essential workers and to assess each job site and to make sure that farm workers have the equipment that they need, the body protections, the hand sanitizing, the bathrooms, and their essential needs. We can't wait for health care. We know that SB 562 has been frozen. We've been fighting that through LACLA and many organizations, and Poor People's Campaign out of Sacramento and Yolo County. You know, but we need health care, universal health care in California right now, which would have included farm workers, immigrants, and everybody, regardless, into this program. But it was frozen by Anthony Rendon out of the Democratic Party with the Democratic Senate Assembly and a Democratic governor at the time, Jerry Brown. So what we're saying is we cannot wait for health care for all. We need it now. And we also need Cal OSHA to step up. We need more Cal OSHA agents out in the field to assess these jobs, to be able to measure and assess if there's any kind of works or labor violations. You know, food is a national security. And what we're talking about is fair wages for farm workers, health care for all, housing for farm workers, child care, hazardous pay. We're talking about a real stimulus package that is going to include all of this. We know his 75 million taxpayer matching fund to these other donators is great. It's a step in the right direction, but we want more. We want to see more actions in place, right? And so in doing that, you know, through this COVID-19, there's no better time than to get Cal OSHA working for the people. And that's the bottom line. The other issue that we addressed in our letter, which we feel that is extremely important, is also the Mexican workers across the border. You know, we've been doing a lot of organizing with Mexican unions, and I can tell you right now that there are factories right now where workers are walking off the job because of safety conditions, just like over here. we're getting reports through meetings that workers, essential workers out of New York who are delivering packages are being told to report to work with fevers. OSHA of that state should be on the front line protecting those workers along with unions. And when we're talking about unions stepping up, we're saying, you know, this has to happen right now. You have UAW in Oakland right now. You know, just before everyone had to you know, stay indoors, they were out with press conferences saying we have a serious issue about health and safety on how to work on site with COVID-19. We have the nurses union right now in Sacramento and nationwide, you know, demanding that they get the training and the supplies that they need to be able to serve the public. And so this is a Cal OSHA issue, and we need to emphasize and we need to force that Cal OSHA do their job and they hire more workers to go out and assess every essential classification in California. In addition to that, when we protect growers, when we protect farm workers, we're protecting every family in California with clean food, clean water. And that's a statewide national security. Food is a national security, and we have to start looking at it this way. We have 22 to 23 million unemployed people, and we need to start thinking about how to put people, how to keep people working in their jobs safely.
A minute.
And, you know, the other thing that, you know, I want to address also is that the amount of, you know, the amount of essential workers out on the front line who are working in these dangerous conditions, they are coming home to their families, and they are petrified that their families are at risk. In addition to our federal government failing the American people, and workers right now crying for help and demanding for help, they are absolutely stressed and very concerned about their families at home, you know, getting this virus. Because on their job site, they're told that if they complain, they're gonna get fired. If they organize, they're going to get fired. If they don't show up to work even sick, they're going to get fired. These are all reports that the media is not covering, but this is the reality of what's happening in our country. And when we look at California's agricultural industry, do understand that we're not just producing for California citizens or for the US. We have literally our largest, Canada and Mexico are the largest two suppliers of the US. And workers in Mexico right now who are in these factories making car parts and harvesting fruits and vegetables, if they're not protected as well with product coming into the United States versus product going into Canada, the farm workers being impacted here in the United States from product going into Canada, we're talking about a very huge economical collapse. So taking care of farm workers, making sure that they have the needs, the emergency assistance, that they're being paid hazardous pay, they have health care, they have housing, and their needs are taken care of, means that we are a stable California and a stable nation.
Gracias, Desiree. Thank you. Powerful point. We have your father, Al Rojas. Al helped co-found the UFW and was an organizer in the grape boycott in 1968 to 1970 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He and his family also participated in a tomato strike in Yolo County in 73, 74. I remember those days in Stockton as a little kid. He also had some strikes there. And the national grape boycott. Al has been involved in a large part of the UFW history. And he has been a longtime labor and civil rights leader and advocate in the Sacramento region. So, Al? Are you here, Al? Let's see. No Rojas? Are you present?
He's there.
Okay.
He's the number 916-712-4251. If he's single, by the way. Just kidding.
Hello, can you hear me?
There you go, Gramps.
Okay. Welcome.
Okay. Manuel, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Okay. First of all, I want to thank everybody who's on the line. And I want to thank you, Professor Barajas. I've known you for many years. I just want to thank everybody's comments because I think a lot of you were on point in regards to the whole issue, which is a huge, huge concern to all of us, especially the whole issue of networking with one another, which is extremely.
The sound is not coming out very clear. Is there a way of getting closer to the speaker?
Well, I'm on the phone.
Okay, muy bien. Ahora sí.
Okay. I'm not going to repeat what I just said, but I'm just going to say thank you for inviting me and my daughter, Desiree. We're both members of the Labor Council for Latin American Advancement, AFL-CIO, and Change to Win. First of all, all of this, after all my years in organizing and also the adjudication of labor law in regards to when I spent at least 18 to 20 years organizing farm workers. And I was not the only one that founded the Farm Workers Union. But I can say that the United Farm Workers Union was initially an independent union and merged with the National Farm Workers Association back in 1965, 66. And the AWOC, Agricultural Workers Organizing Committee, which is the Filipinos who actually started the strikes back in the Coachella Valley and moved it up north to San Joaquin Valley. What I can say is that to me it's kind of horrendous because after almost 60 years, it's been that long, we're back in the same place, but now it's worse. And the issue is, and has been, in regards to workers, is wages. If they were paid a decent wage, farm workers at least $26 an hour, there'd be no problem in regards to people being able to survive. But you cannot survive on minimum wage, not today, especially even in Sacramento, in regards to what rents are like. You can imagine what it is in other parts of the state or in the coastal valleys where it's very lucrative because you're close to the ocean. The point here is that it's political. Let's get down with it because that's the way I look at it. It's always been political. But the strange thing about all this is that are we really listening? Are we taking and observing what's happening? We have a Democratic governor, we have a Democratic Senate, a Democratic Assembly, majority, okay? And there's a lot of power there. I usually hear people say, if we only had control of the government and the Democratic, party way. But those things have changed. Today, to me, as far as I'm concerned, the Democratic Party looks like corporate to me, and they behave like corporate. And it's like an elephant that we have to push and really pressure. When I heard the statement by Governor Gavin Newsom, I felt, well, this is great. It's going to be a relief with regard to, they deem it to be stimulus. It's not a stimulus. It's basically him going into the disaster emergency fund for $75 million, when in essence, they were excluded, as we all know, by the federal government, who is really more than anti-union. They're evil. And the bottom line is that the politics of this is now affecting all workers. but more so the people who are our brothers and sisters. And I respect everybody's term, using the term immigrants, but they are not immigrants. When you go to Mexico and some of the workers come here, they consider themselves, because they are indigenous people, original people from this continent. They come from the North American continent. They don't come from across the ocean. So they deem themselves, we are the native people of this continent and the continents of the Americas. But when we get to the point where we're dealing with the comments made by the governor, he doesn't mention anything that has to do with the kinds of issues that were spelled out by Sister Irene, and the young lady from United. It's a matter of enforcement. And if there's no enforcement, when you have only 7,000 workers in the state of California unionized, and at one time, when we won the boycott, it was more like 60,000 farm workers. Okay?
Brother Rojas, can you speak a little clearer?
What we're talking about here is that we're saying we need to push the button.
Thank you.
On the Democratic Party in the House and also in the Assembly. It's about prevention. And prevention means that you got several agencies. You got the Labor Commissioner's Office, or the Workforce Agency. You got the CalOSHA, which has been mentioned a lot. You got other agencies where you have a lot of people who they could have pulled out. I work for the Labor Commissioner's Office as a Deputy Labor Commissioner. And with that 23 years, I was able to see what, inequities and some of the corruption that was happening with regards to when the politics of the growers would call in and say, we don't want you to come in and enforce the law. Literally. And they would tell us that in our staff meetings. So that burned my mind and my heart with regards to, and this is an agency supposed to defend and protect workers? Absolutely not. And that's the case now. When we have to do is be able to read this and say, no, Mr. Governor, this is not enough. The stimulus program has got to go through the Assembly and the Senate, and you sign the bill. We're talking more like maybe $1 billion. He himself said and stated in a statement to the people of California, the undocumented community has paid taxes in the amount of $2 billion and a half. Taxes. And they're not getting any benefit back as it relates to some kind of payback with regards to the hard work and what they earned, okay? So the question here is, what do we do? Well, we fought like heck with the 562, and it's the same government, the Democrats, who denied, working people, nurses who've been denied the proper protections as the farm workers and the undocumented community. And basically we have a humongous disaster that's coming as it relates to the economic situation that we're in. And the bottom line is it's not over. We don't know when it's going to end. Right now, there's well over 30, almost going to 35,000 people have died of coronavirus, okay? So they can't zero in when people can leave their homes being incarcerated and keeping us from saying, speaking out. And this is the only way we can speak out is through social media or honk our horns in our cars, and that's it. But the bottom line is almost like it's a well-planned situation where unions are in the same situation, and unions have got to deal with the whole situation about layoffs. You got janitors, you got grocery store workers, you got restaurant workers. The restaurant business in San Francisco is devastated, and the bottom line is we're not hearing the governor saying we're going to initiate and working with all these groups like the women that are on this line, the leaders campesinas, and other many other groups. We have to build a force, political force, throughout the state. We're all writing letters and making sure that we're holding accountable, our elected officials. Even though I don't believe, in essence, that this whole question about they're going to do a lot for us unless we really push the button. There's no question about this whole question about chemicals and pesticides that many of the workers in the thousands and millions have been sprayed on. There was a young lady in Oxnard made a video about the farmer was spraying workers out in the fields. That's way before this coronavirus. Coronavirus can have many aspects of theories about how this came to be. But the bottom line is the pharmaceutical industry and all these people who develop all these chemicals and biological chemicals is something of great concern. But the bottom line is that our politicians are only concerned right now about how do we get, we win the election because we have Trump, okay? No question that we're all opposed to Trump. But if those politicians are not moving, then the unions, we got to get the unions from the rank and file, from the bottom up, not from the top, from the bottom up, the unions and union members to move and to put the pressure on their own unions to say, what are we doing? What are we going to do? What's happening to us? Well, some people don't want to hear it, but there's union officials earning six-figure salaries. I'm saying, and I remember Chavez said on this, when we win this boycott, and we're going to win it, there's not going to be six-figure salaries for people who are working for the union. They're going to get what workers under contract works in the fields. They get 30, 40,000 a year. If that be the case, then that's what you're going to get, and depending on that. But we're not going to get to where we get to that, lose our sight of where we're going on this. But the bottom line is that we're in a situation where we need to organize and build, force with networking with all these groups and many other groups. But I see this as like a charitable giving on the part of, and it's great, that the foundations and philanthropy groups who get money from corporations. There's 170 billionaires in the San Jose, Santa Clara, and San Francisco area. Have we heard of anything about the governor meeting with them or the growers in the valley? They're saying, listen, you have to provide all these safety equipments. That's what happened to me when I was working in Oxnard in 1961 as a farmer, cutting broccoli and lettuce and all the vegetables, they harvest in the coastal valleys, and nothing's changed. And the only thing that's going to change is we all start to understand, even though we're saying don't buy those Driscoll berries, those are U.S. corporations from Watsonville over in Mexico and Baja California, 5.5 hours from the border, who are exploiting our workers and they're forcing them to come over here. Now they're talking about let's bring in guest workers so we can put them against the undocumented workers, because they can have control over a workforce that's basically indentured servitude, basically slaves. They're controlled by the Mexican government, they're controlled by the U.S. government, Homeland Security, and then they're handed over to their growers.
Un minuto, Al. Un minuto.
Okay, so I'm just going to end it. Here. That hopefully all of you understand that when we say boycott Driscoll's, it's the same thing as a poison that's happening with this virus. This virus is treacherous because it's contagious. But even then, we need to pull together and be able to say an injury to one is an injury to all. So I just want to thank you and Manuel and everybody on the panel here, because I think there needs to be a discussion, and this is a great way of starting it by doing it this way.
Gracias, Al. Gracias, Al. Quiero recognize my associates, the CRISJ. They are amazing, awesome, and it's a teamwork. So, I'm very privileged, very honored to be their colleague and partner with community partners from the Poor People's Campaign, with LULAC now and many others, las campesinas líderes también. And so we're building a network, and we're going to move forward together and be more powerful and work to empower our comunidades, because they are the ones that create the wealth, and they're getting very little support. So gracias. We have one more. Juanita Ontiveros serves in the USW Support Committee in Northern California. She has continuously worked for California Rural Legal Assistance Foundations since its inception. In this role, she works on the field, making sure farm workers' rights are being enforced, access to water, toilets, shade, breaks, pay, and so on. Juanita is also a member of the Chicano Royal Air Force Artists. She's also an alumni from Sac State, and when she was a student activist who contributed in the creation of ethnic studies in many other minority-focused centers. Juanita, muchísimas gracias for participating, for being here with us, and for sharing your knowledge and wisdom. ¿Lista?
Lista.
Okay.
And buenas tardes a todos y mucho gusto a los que no conozco en persona, y perdonen que no estamos en persona, que lo estamos haciendo por lo que está pasando por estos otros medios. Just want to say que a lot, I'm not going to repeat a lot of what was said already. But I am going to say that a lot of what has been done, by the United Farm Workers and CRLAF, California Rural Legal Assistance Foundation, has been directly, taken from the workers themselves that have called in, and the priority issues were being looked at very seriously and taken into account. And like other people in other organizations, letters were sent immediately to the governor. Went one step further because we have somewhat of good news in the last couple of days. Governor Newsom came through with some funding. Of course, it's not ever going to be enough for the number of farm workers, especially undocumented families that need the money. But he came through with a big amount, 125 million, and so we'll see how that's going to be divided and all that. This is just in the last a couple of days. Farm workers are deemed essential during the coronavirus pandemic, but they have always been essential. And that's how the union and organizations like ours that work with farm workers have viewed, for years and years. Just before this pandemic happened, we were taking workers, trying to ban a very dangerous pesticide. And pesticides are always dangerous, and yes, most of them that are lethal and they cause cancer. This one not only causes cancer, but it's been tied to autism in children of farm workers. And it also had a third very horrific kind of side effect, and that it gives symptoms of schizophrenia to workers. And just when workers think that, I didn't have issues with that, it's gone away, it comes back. And bring that up because we had brought to hearings at the Capitol workers that were facing, women that had already had amputations and removal of breasts and so forth because of the cancer that it causes, and brought families with children that have autism. And then there were workers with schizophrenic conditions. And so that and what's going on right now with the whole stress on of the coronavirus, want to say, because we're talking to students right now. Hopefully, they're listening, and the academic faculty, that we need more counselors out there right now, psychiatric counselors, school counselors, counselors of every. So please, giving a push for that career and those fields. Great need of that right now, of those careers. The farm workers, there's two bullets that I want to address. Farm workers are deemed essential during the coronavirus pandemic, but many of these critical workers won't benefit the benefits of the 2.2 trillion stimulus package that lawmakers recently passed because of their legal status. Another thing that we have focused on is the relatives of the people in the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement custody cope with fears about the possible spread of the coronavirus inside crowded detention centers. And right now, here in Northern California, we have a huge one, Yuba City Detention Center, where the network that has been working on that, we managed to get 4 of the detainees that were very in danger of being in there and being contaminated with the virus. We want all of them to be released, all of the detainees. So just, I think it was early this week, we had a car rally in front of and around the Yuba Detention Center. Hopefully that picks up in other detention centers, up and down the state. I think that we don't have to have the rallies next to each other, because we want to abide by the directives of not being, close to each other in person, but there's other ways. And so I'm bringing that out there. There's other ways to rally. And this was a car rally, and it worked. And coronavirus, that the threat is not just to the health and safety of farm workers, it's to the safety of the whole food supply itself. There are 2.5 million agricultural workers in the U.S., and roughly half are undocumented. As a result, a large portion of this critical workforce does not have wage protections. Many live in fear and some in anger, not always fear, of deportation, and they lack health insurance. A benefit that can mean life or death as the coronavirus spreads across the country. The U.S. government says farm workers are essential workers during the pandemic, just like first responders, healthcare workers, and countless others who cannot work from home. However, because of their legal status, half of all agricultural workers in the U.S. are not getting a cut of the $2 trillion government stimulus package. As farm workers harvest the fresh produce on which millions depend, there are no social distancing protocols in place. That puts them in a difficult position as they are caught between fears of the coronavirus and feeding the nation. Um, but the recent shift in the U.S. consumer habits is also having a damaging effect on farm workers. Shoppers are lining up outside grocery stores hours before they open and depleting supplies at an alarming rate, some of which aren't restocked until the next day. Many farm workers spend the majority of their days in the field. They often can't make their own trips to the store until the evenings, when most commodities have already been swiped from the shelves, and they come up with empty shelves. Imagine what would happen if coronavirus ravages the farm worker population and the fresh fruits and vegetables and other commodities that rely on farm workers. So the threat is not just to the health and safety of farm workers, it's to the safety of the food supply itself. And I had to repeat that. So the UFW, like other entities, wrote letters to the governor, letters to Washington. They wrote one letter on March 17th, not just to the governor and the president, but address also growers, the agriculture industry itself. And I'm going to read, the beginning and what they received. I mean the growers and agribusiness. Gestures such as issuing letters or postcards affirming farm workers are essential employees do not substitute for real steps to stem the virus. Many growers point to guidance and best practices flowing from trade associations as evidence of industry action. But these same organizations do little, if anything, to ensure 100% compliance by their affiliated members. Given the peril of the pandemic and the emergency in which we find ourselves, plus the urgent need for an uninterrupted food supply, the essential women and men working in agriculture need and deserve nothing less than immediate 100% compliance, such as extending sick leave to 40 hours or more, eliminating 90-day wait periods for new workers to be eligible for sick pay, eliminating required doctor's notes when workers claim sick days, implementing mandatory formal workplace plans to enforce social distancing, protect workers and minimize infections, cleaning and disinfecting frequently touched surfaces multiple times daily, arranging for easy access to medical services, plus screening, testing, and treatment for the great majority of non-union farm workers who have no health care, providing for daycare and flexibility since schools are closed, working with the UFW to cover farm workers under federal and state relief or stimulus benefits, since at least half of U.S. farm workers are undocumented. That is something that
Muchísimas gracias.
that was taken very seriously, and when we wrote to the to the governor. You know, it says where were we getting this information? Straight from the workers. This the workers, for example, that come to the migrant camps, and we have many throughout the state. They're open only from March through December, and then when farm work slows down, they close the camps, the labor camps, and so workers either if they can, they go to other harvests at other places. Some of the workers around here go to the apple harvest in Washington, the state of Washington. However, this year they got confronted with that state of Washington is having their own crisis with the coronavirus. So they're very leery to go this year, and you know, they would be in danger over there as well. And so they want to stay put. Others take the time during those slow months, which the workers call los meses malos, and they go to Mexico. And so this year, they were saying, what if they don't let us back across the border? They're fearing not being able to cross again. And so they want to stay put. So one of the priorities was to ask if they could have year-round housing this year because of the pandemic. And so that is being worked out very seriously right now so that can happen. And like we're talking about, just to give you an example, in the San Joaquin County, there's 2 huge migrant labor camps in French Camp, in the town of French Camp. There's another huge one outside of Lodi. All 3 of those labor camps hold 100 families, not 100 workers, 100 families each. And so many of the families don't come just with their little family. Some have the grandparents also with them. So this is something that that the workers are very concerned about. We're working very hard on that. Another issue that came up, farm workers are different in terms of applying for unemployment insurance, UI. Most other workers that have been laid off or just got laid off just barely applied for UI. Farm workers apply in December. So when they come back to report for work in March, their unemployment insurance funds are almost depleted. If they didn't receive their last check, they're about to receive their last check. And so they were asking many of the workers when they got confronted with that there was this virus going on, and they couldn't start work because they came to report to work, and they were being confronted that you know, some employers were saying they had to be to wait. Others were saying you know, maybe we can put 5 workers spaced out in one orchard and another 5 in another orchard and another 5 in another orchard. And so they were doing different things, trying different things.
Juanita,
but
yes. The unemployment that they've depleted, and then many do not can't access it because of the undocumented status. That is very tragic. I recall that in the last New Deal in the 1930s, farm workers, domestics, were excluded from those rights until the 1970s, 1980s. And so now,
that's true.
Back then, it was a very racialized exclusion. It was mostly people of color doing those jobs. Now they use the concept of legality. Anyhow, we had quite a few people who attended the panel, and they directed some questions to Heidi, and we ran out of time. So maybe if we can spend just 10 minutes, if people are able to, and if you can select some questions.
Let me
Yes.
address that. Yes, and that's very true. And because those workers that are undocumented, they pay into the system from their checks. They're deducted UI and they're deducted Social Security. Yet they can benefit from those. But that's exactly why we address that with the governor, and that's why he just released this 125 million to start with.
Sí, muy bien.
To start with to address.
Expanded. Muy bien.
Yes, and he's targeting the undocumented workers on that. So the letter in this, I'm gonna share it a really brief letter that the UFW wrote. It says, UFW Governor Newsom order on paid sick leave vital in protecting farm workers, farmers, and the food supply. And it says, United Farm Workers President Teresa Romero issued this statement following announcement of Governor Gavin Newsom's executive order on worker sick pay. And this just happened, in the last couple of days. So he's working on all of the issues that we put together in a combination letter. And so Governor Newsom's executive order on paid sick leave is an important step in controlling the spread of the coronavirus in California's farming communities. Farm worker families and the families of farmers work, play, shop, and worship together. Protecting these small, tight-knit communities is vital to the protection of our food supply. The United Farm Workers will work with both state and agricultural leaders in making the executive order operational. And that's on sick leave, okay? We're also working on the Health for All and to open it up. Let's say, yes. So all these points that the workers wanted. Mm-hmm. Another thing is safety. The safety. A lot of farm workers are working, but they don't have masks. They don't have gloves, protective gear, and so that's another thing that we're working on right now.
Juanita, we ran out of time.
Yeah.
I apologize. We ran out of time. We're supposed to have 20 minutes for question and answers. We are at 1:30, and some people have to leave. So I'm going to ask Heidi Saravia, Professor Heidi Saravia, whether if she has a couple of questions that are directed to the panel in general from the attendees. Heidi?
I think Georgina had two quick questions. Do you want to say them, Georgina, or do you want me to read them? She was just interested how to donate funds that go directly to farm workers, and Irene already responded to her. But her second question, addressing Juanita's sort of issue that she brought up about counseling. As a student of counseling at Sac State, where could she go to volunteer?
Okay, excellent.
And just one more question that somebody emailed to us that said that why are farm workers having to work to survive and not being provided proper protection and economic help during the pandemic? He said because their jobs are considered essential service.
Yes, well, it's very evident that historically farm labor is closely related to the concept of slavery. And people of color have always done it. And we have an unfair system that has historically devalued specific racialized occupations, domestic work,
Yes.
farm labor, service work, and it's been historically continuous. It's very normalized. How can it be that 1% of the workforce beats the rest of the 99% and yet remain in poverty conditions? This is a norm that is structured in policy, culture, practices, and it is up to us and our networks to work together and challenge these normalized devaluations of essential workers. And it is race, class, gender based, and it's historical. And it just happens that those occupations that are predominantly indigenous or Afro-Latino, they remain at the bottom. And, you know, it is,
Filipino.
yes. So we have to be, you know, honest, truthful, and with, you know, we've been denied this history, this education, multiple perspectives, especially from those at the bottom. And so that's our role through CRISJ and through our partners. Working together, we can make a difference. And so I will ask all of you who participated, if you have statements that you directed to the policy recommendations, if you can send forward them to the CRISJ associates hosts, Heidi Sarabia or Cristina Victor or me, Manuel Barajas, then we can share it to those who participated in this panel. If we have, for instance, those policies recommendations, Irene, Juanita, Desiree, we can, you know, put them together and share them with our list of friends, associates, and then we can stay in communication and support each other's efforts and combine these efforts and be more impactful and challenging these primitive logics that keep us down.
Manuel, can I just mention something? And I will send you, I have a whole list of resources and even some organizations that are giving cash funds to families, you know, in trying to help them pay the rent or whatever. But I wanted to say that one thing that everybody needs to know is that the farm workers are thinking more ahead in case that they get the virus and in case they don't make it. So I want to tell people that, for example, the Consulado Mexicano has two services that really are not broadcasted, you know, enough. But one of those is the Ventana de Salud for health resources. The other one is a burial services. So if a Mexican citizen, for example, passes away and the family does not have any funding and they need to send the person, the body back to Mexico, they have a service for that, burial services. They used to have full body, but right now, because of the pandemic, it's only cremation. But people need to know that so that they can advise the workers.
Send us this information, and we'll be seeking out and making a directory of resources.
The other one that's highly important is planification of families. So if something happens to them, they want very much to know if there's a legal document that they can leave behind where their children do not get picked up by CPS, you know, that they will go to whoever they designate on that document that their children can go to, you know, and so that becomes like so important for organizations to know. And there is such a family planification document, and we can help with that. So if you want to hear more about that, do a presentation just on those issues, let us know.
Today was a first piloted CRISJ panel through Zooming. We've never done this before, so it's a learning experience, and we've learned a lot. And we're very appreciative to the panelists, to Irene, Nuri, muchísimas gracias, Desiree, Al, y Juanita. And I hope we can do something like this in the fall, just like continue it and bring us face to face in a more powerful way if we're able to, or else we'll continue this you know, distant way of organizing. But I want to thank everybody for making time, for helping out, for being supportive, and stay in touch. Y yeah, muchas gracias. Anyone wants to, of the panelists, any other remarks of those of you who presented early? Irene?
I'd like to add something,
Yes.
Manuel. First of all, I want to say thank you again very much, and to all the panelists and everybody who is online. Everyone said, you know, amazing things. But I just want to say that the letter that Lachlan wrote to the governor, you can find that on our Facebook page, and you can also comment us there, and you can also message me through there with any kind of questions. And we also have on our, which is surfacing everywhere, is a listing, a table of relief funds for undocumented workers in California that's going everywhere. But I just want to mention that LACWA does have that posted on our Facebook.
Gracias, Desiree. Luego we have Unite también. Unite. We can seek out there. Okay.
This is Brother Carter.
Brother Carter, yes.
I was away from the call. I'm doing some basic needs stuff. So if I could just weigh in just for a moment and say that I want to thank you, CRISJ faculty, for putting this panel together, and actually the whole entire conversation, because it's important. Right now, we look around the country, this country, and everything is being put forward before we can get to the point to where everybody has been tested, and especially when it comes to the minority community, you know what I'm saying, Black and brown people. And what I think we should do, not let this end here, but take this panel and everybody that is on this call, and let's stay together and turn this in and find a way to where we could turn this into a town hall series or something like that, to where we stay on this page. Because with the Black community, I'm working with the African American community, we are working on a town hall series to continue, because we want to make sure that our people, before the end of the day, are tested. We don't want them to run away from these issues of making sure that we're okay in this process. They're taking care of their folks, but they need to take care of us. You know what I'm saying? And we also need to take care of ourselves in demanding that they do. So I just wanted to emphasize that. And then the other part is that we need to make our demands, you know what I'm saying, to a continuance to not just to the governor, but also to our civic leaders, the county, all of these folks, because it's important. The president wants to move forward and say, let's open the country back, let's open the nation back up. The governor is trying to move in certain places to open it back up. But no, we can't open until everything is right for us. We're not going to be the people that, you know, sacrifice our lives for them to live. We have a right to live too, but we have a right to live under the right conditions. And that's to make sure that we are treated too, that we know too that we're not stuck with this virus. Our children are not stuck with it. Our family members, nobody is stuck with not knowing if we have the virus or not. And I just want to put that out there, because I think what we did today holds a beginning, not to prolong and say we'll wait till the next time. Let's see how we can do a continuance of this, because it's important to us. The urgency of now is now.
Now, yes.
Thank you.
You know what he just said is so important to mention. Just on the testing and testing of farm workers, one of the suggestions, many of these suggestions come straight from the workers, and not only do they say about what is needed, they also give suggestions on how to solve things. And one of those was in testing and getting food. They heard some time ago that on Univision that the governor wanted to use the National Guard in some way to help in this coronavirus epidemic. And so they right away had suggestions. They said, why doesn't he send the National Guard to bring us to the labor camps, the bags of food. That would be less dangerous for everybody instead of having farm workers go stand in line to get food bags in an urban area and expose their children and themselves when they don't have health care. And so he said that would be a very good use of the National Guard. And says, and also, why don't they come, the National Guard, and do the testing in the labor camps instead of the workers having to go and stand in line again, you know, in an urban area, getting exposed and getting endangered. And so we voiced that. Yes, we voiced that to the governor, and he's looking at that, you know. And if he doesn't use, if he doesn't use the National Guard, he can create new jobs with people that will do that to go and deliver, to go and do things like that for others. It's all out in you know, on the table now in terms of the creation of new jobs for people that have been laid off.
Manuel, I'd like to interject on that. What Juanita was just talking about is that, you know, going back to Cal OSHA is it. You know, we could create new jobs through Cal OSHA to go and assess and to provide these services, to make sure the proper equipment's there, that things are sanitized, and to do training and outreach. We've got a lot of people that need work, and this is a prime example of putting more jobs into Cal OSHA for agents.
Excellent idea. I totally agree, because they have that background. They have that background. They don't have to get trained, or even connecting to university, to social work, health, getting interns who have that training. Great idea. Thank you. I think there's a lot more to cover. A lot of people have to go. Or CRISJ hosts, they've been at it since very early in the morning. So thank you, Cristina, Heidi, Manny. Thank you. And I think we'll stay connected. I don't think a lot of us want to leave, but many do have other things to do. So muchas gracias, many thank yous. Abrazos, best wishes to all of you. Take care.
Can I just say Aviva? Can I just yell Aviva here?
Aviva, go for it.
Que vivan los campesinos, que vivan los campesinos. Que viva la Unión de Campesinos, que viva la UFW, que viva CRLA Foundation, que vivan los artistas, y que viva este panel. Y es un esfuerzo que síganos para el futuro.
Gracias, Juanita.
Sí, con eso, pero también que hasta la victoria siempre.
Y hasta la victoria.
We have everybody's email address if you're pre-registered, and so I think we're probably going to continue this conversation beyond the panel, because there was a lot of interest in continuing with these sort of like
Irene, Nuri, Al, Juanita, muchísimas gracias.
Gracias, Manuel.
Gracias a ustedes. Gracias, Manuel.
Cuidan mucho. Stay strong.
Saludos.
All right, God bless everybody. Stay safe.
Thank you. Con permiso, pues. Thank you.
Good job, guys.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
so
You're
that went decent. We should probably get together, kind of do a little debrief, maybe Monday or Tuesday.